back to the vocal vibe. We're back with Wise and Wira as usual. How you guys doing? How's it going? What's going on? What's new for y'all?
Oh yeah, just hopped off some karaoke sessions with friends, and they're all singers. Super high pressure karaoke session. That was pretty intense. But yeah,
I saw
Wise,
it. Like,
what about you?
Wira's video had people doing warm-ups before the karaoke session, which I've never seen before. I've done it before, myself, quietly, like going to the bathroom, come back, and like drink a lot of water. Alright, when's it my turn? Alright, here we go. But I never seen people go, alright, here's a piano, let's go. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, Melissa can't see it because it's in my private account. You should follow it.
He'll tell
But
you.
yeah, Wise, what about you?
I actually got my cough back. Yeah, we talked about it. Like, we talked the last time, and I was like vocal resting when we were doing the planning and stuff. So, and for me, like, my cough hasn't healed even after the full course of antibiotics. I had like yellow phlegm today and stuff. But my voice has somewhat recovered. There was a point it was completely hoarse. But I think I can do most things. Flageolate a bit less reliably. But yeah, I can do most things still. So I think I can talk today, but I might mute myself for coughing. I might forget to mute myself at some parts. So please forgive me if I blast your ears with all the colors of the spectrum every now and then. Yeah. So that's me. Mel?
Just trying
okay. Sorry about that.
You're good. Just trying to get students back in the door because summer seasons are slow, so trying to get everything back together. And then my kid was sick, and now I have a runny nose, and I've told Weir, I'm pretty sure I hurt my wrist because it's like slightly swollen and a little bit strained whenever I move it. It hurts. So don't know what I did to it, but he's like, maybe you're playing scales too hard or something.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't.
Maybe you want to rest with the piano scales. Maybe you want to create some midis for your students instead.
It started hurting last night. I was like, what did I do? What did I do to my hand? So yeah, it's all weird. Sorry, I'm like super runny as well. Like my nose is like going crazy. But yeah, so we're here to talk about vocal registers today. So that's exciting. So
yeah, I've been reading so much on it. I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah, all right. I love that. So let's start off with the question here. What makes a register and other registers different and separate? Like, how do we define what a register is and what makes a register a register?
I'll let Wira go first because I got the textbook definition here.
I don't know.
What does your heart tell you, Wira?
Well, I would say it's a mechanism in your you can choose with your voice. It's as simple as I can put it.
Yeah. So
mechanism by which we produce our sounds. I don't know.
Yeah, pretty much aligns with the textbook definition from Garcia, Manuel Garcia, one of the like famous voice teachers. So I'm just gonna read it here because I'm gonna read the first part that most people quote, but there's another part which people kind of tend to ignore, which says here, by the word register, we mean a series of consecutive and homogeneous tones, depending on how you read it, going from low to high, produced by the same mechanical principle, which is what we were talking about, and whose nature differs essentially from another series of tones equally consecutive and homogeneous, produced by another mechanical principle. Well, that's a lot of stuff, but basically what it means is what Wira was saying, that it's basically a set of notes in your voice that sound the same or sound similar, homogeneous, and it's going from a certain range, low to high, and it's produced by the same mechanical principle. But what does mechanical principle mean, right? So to different people it means different things. To Manuel Garcia, it was more of what Wira was saying, because a lot of people, from what I've read, they don't quote this next part, which says, right after, the sentence immediately after says, all the tones belonging to the same register are consequently of the same nature, whatever otherwise may be the modifications of timbre or of the force to which one subjects them, which just basically means it doesn't matter what vowel you're singing, it doesn't matter what you're doing with the stuff above your vocal folds. It's what determines the register is what your vocal folds are doing. So are they thick? Are they loose? Are they vibrating in a certain way? And then so something like that's what you would call one of the registers where your vocal folds are doing one thing, and then you have where your vocal folds are doing another thing. But in reality, a lot of people don't think of register strictly in this way, because people also think of what does it sound like. So you've got things like this kind of goes to another question that we have later, but people will say there's head voice, yeah, and there's falsetto, yeah. They'll be like, and there's like chest voice, which is like, yeah. But strictly speaking, laryngally, yeah and yeah are the same. You're doing the same thing with your vocal folds, maybe slightly different, but you're doing basically the same thing. But the way it sounds is different. So that oh gosh, my screen flashed again. But yeah, so I don't want to get into the resonance stuff until we get there in the next podcast. I don't know if it's the next one or one of the future ones, but there are a lot of people out there who consider register to be also influenced by the acoustics, which is like what vowel you're singing or what else you're doing with the vocal tract, which is everything above your vocal folds. And there are people who, or like how breathy the tone is or how not breathy the tone is. Maybe some people say that a falsetto is like a breathy version and of this, and then like a non-breathy version is like a head voice. Some people might, some people might say it like that. So mechanical principle can include this if you don't ignore that second part of Manuel Garcia's quote, because acoustics are also mechanical principles. So that's kind of what it means. So you'll actually see a lot of different terms out there. You'll see people talk about chest voice, head voice, falsetto, voce mixte, I don't know how you pronounce it, it's French or something. Or you got people saying things like hiss register, I recently saw that, where it's the same thing as, like, it could be the same thing as flageolet or whistle register, but in terms of what you're doing, I haven't explained that, but we'll get to it eventually. But it's that if it's in a certain range of notes, it's this register. If it's a certain range of other notes, it's this register, even though they're produced by the same principle, because it sounds different, which is an acoustic thing as well. So I think that's how you answer the register question, but I think, yeah, we can go even deeper, but let's leave it at that. Basically, it's you produce your sound in a certain way, and it depends on who you ask. Maybe the way you shape your sound, whether it's through your vowels or whether it's through how breathy or how pressed it is, also may influence perception of register. So there's like the scientific register, how it's actually made. Oh, I'm gonna split it as like the scientific register, what you do here, and the perceptual register, like what you hear. So yeah, that's I caught that from some website. I think it was vocalskills.co.uk. So I'm not gonna take credit for that terminology, but yeah, I think it's quite neat. I was just
reminded of an exercise I did with my coach, and we're building chest voice, but he was giving me like this, like that's like closed mouth, and like he says, put as much chest as you can.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
like, I'm like, it doesn't sound like chest. It doesn't, but it feels like chest. So maybe that's where you can have that discernible scientific register and perceptual,
perceived, whatever, acoustic,
perceived register,
anything.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think that it's very much based on the chords and what the chords are doing for sure. The length, the thickness, the overall vibratory mechanism when they come together, if they're coming together a bit more firmly, how much they're coming together as opposed to staying apart or being a bit more open. So open versus closed quotient, all that good stuff. I don't know if anybody who's watching even knows what that means, but essentially, the more closed quotient you have, the more often the chords are coming together, and the more firmly they're coming together. And then the more open quotient you have, the more they're staying apart. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then obviously pitch is a huge factor in registers as well. Lower pitches tend being the keyword here, to be chestier, and then higher pitches tend to be headier or thinner overall. So those are definitely some factors too, is pitches and then overall chord closure.
Oh man, like the open quotient thing. So I've been reading a lot on it, and the funny thing is, it's like in most of the papers I've read, they do seem to suggest that open quotient and closed quotient. Okay, so basically what open quotient is just imagine your vocal folds, right? They do this, right? They do this swirly whirly thing where they slap each other, go back, or maybe they don't slap each other. But the idea is that when they vibrate, they can do let's say they're vibrating at 10 beats per second, just to be very simple. So like da 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 da, or like 1 beat per second, right? Now that 1 beat per second can be divided in a few ways. I don't know if you can see this if you're just listening, but I'm slapping my hands together to simulate vocal folds. And I can do this. I can just make it even. 1, 2, 3, 4. So then the amount of time the vocal folds are closed and the amount of time the vocal folds are open, maybe it's about the same. But I can also do this where I just like close them and then open them, close them and open them, close them and open them, close them and open them, and they're open for a very long time, which means more air comes out, which tends to be like a bit breathier, like more air is leaking out. So open quotient is it's like that. You're leaking air in a sense, the more open quotient there is. But with closed quotient, what happens is that the vocal folds kind of slam like this, where they close really fast and stay there, and then they open for a really short time, close really fast, open, close really fast, stay there closed, and do that. Something like that. It's a bit more complicated, but something to that effect. So, it's not really easy to measure this because of how the vocal folds actually vibrate and the limitations of our measuring tools. But you can get some close proxies. But the point is that what happens if you are looking at chest voice, let's say but what if you do something like my vocal folds are very thick, but it's very breathy. So, and if you do something like this is a falsetto-y kind of sound. Strictly speaking, it's a different register, but it's not as breathy as the chest voice, which is like this. And when they've done recordings, they've actually seen that the breathy chest voice can have a higher open quotient, or that means more time open than the falsetto. So open quotient might not actually be the way to go. And for me, what seems to be the suggestion from this paper by Herbst and others, which I was pointed to by, I think, Chris Fotis, one of the teachers on TikTok. He asked a question in one of these Facebook voice teacher forums, and Ian Howell, what is it? Yeah, he recommended reading some articles by Herbst, and I checked them out, and what he talks about is this thing which Justin Stoney calls vertical compression. Basically, it's how thick your vocal folds are. And I think that goes down to the heart of it. So you've got your vocal folds. They can slap in multiple ways. They can vibrate with the entirety of the vocal folds, where it's really thick. And you would get this kind of wavy motion where the bottom part collides first and the top part collides after, and blah 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 blah. That would be what we would call the that's one register. That's called, some people would call it chest voice, and if you stretch it out, you would call it mixed voice. So, an example, this is what people would call a chest voice, and then if you stretch it out but you still keep that connection, that's called a mixed voice. Or, you've got different degrees in between. But if you kind of let go of that thickness and you just let the vocal folds vibrate in a kind of cutting motion where only the edges are really vibrating, or maybe they're not even touching. They might not even be touching, which means maybe the open quotient is forever because they never touch at all. So in that case, then you have what's called falsetto, or for women, people might call it head voice. Sorry, the first one I would call it M1, vibratory mechanism mode 1. So it's basically whatever we talked about. Generally speaking, the close quotient that Mel was talking about will be above 50%. It's just a high number, generally speaking, but it's not necessary. But the real point is the way the vocal folds vibrate, how much of it is taking part in the vibration. And the M2, or falsetto, or head voice, or I think, yeah, there's lots of different names for it. That will be where the vocal folds are kind of doing this cutting kind of motion, not the whole thing is vibrating. And so you get something like yaw. And the last one, or there's actually two more, you got mechanism 3, or mode 3, where the vocal folds are really stretched out. Maybe not the whole thing is vibrating. And that's what you would call, well, some people you call it flageolet. I've been reading more. Some people call it female laryngeal whistle. And above that, you've got the whistle register, which I think Justin likes to call M4. In one paper that I've read, they still call it M3, but basically it's where your vocal folds are really tight, only the back part is open. He calls it whistle register. I've read it being called stop closure whistle. Doesn't matter. These are all just fancy terms. And then the last one is M0 at the bottom, where your vocal folds are really tight together, but everything's kind of slack. It's just, well, that's your vocal fry, and that's a tour of all the registers. Oh my goodness. That's already a tour of the registers, and I think that answers about what the vibratory mechanisms are. Yeah, please stop me, because I've gone way too far. I got carried away.
Yeah, you're fine. I'm over here just sneezing my freaking guts out right now. I'm actually glad that you're talking, because I'm not able to do a lot of that right now.
No worries.
But yeah, I think there's a really cool distinction that we should make between flageolet and whistle, because people still equate them to be the same thing, and there's a bit of a different coordination happening. So I think it's really, really bizarre that people think that they're the same thing, because whistle is a lot more compressed in general than flageolet, which is usually a lot more decompressed. In fact, I think you were here for this, Wira, and one of the teacher training things, Justin mentioned that sometimes in flageolet, the chords don't have to touch at all. They're just like vibrating with the air itself. Like they don't have to come together to create the sound. So I think it's just really interesting, people that still think that they're the same register when they're very, very different postures of the chords and what's happening. So I think it's kind of a fun topic to talk about too.
Well, why don't we do a little demo here, all of us?
Okay.
Demo all our registers.
Sure.
Mel, maybe you want to start first?
Yeah, I can see what we got here. Again, I'm blocked up. So let's see what we have. We have chest voice. Go, go, go. Go higher. Go, go, go. There's chest voice. Hello. Or breathy chest voice. Go, go, go. Still chest voice. It's breathy, but it's chest voice. And then we have a mix. Mum, 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 mum. That's a mix. We can also do a chest mix. Mum, 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 mum. It's still a mix. It's a bit thicker than the first one, but it's a mix. Then we have a head mix. Mum, 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 mum. That's a mix. Head mix. And then we have head voice. Ooh, we're higher. Ooh, it's a head voice. Ooh, very thin, low sound. I love it. And then we have, forgive me for this one, flageolet. Oh boy. I think I'll get higher than that. Oh boy. Flageolet. It's a flageolet sound. Very, very, very loose, very squeaky kind of quality. And then, forgive me for this one too. That's a whistle sound. Never done. Those are the main ones, and of course we have vocal fry. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome stuff. Wise, you want to go next?
Maybe,
Oh well,
maybe
you
not.
just did. So.
Yeah. So go, Wira. You can demonstrate the
Oh well, let me try.
ingressive whistle
So we
as
got
well.
chest
The-
voice.
yeah.
That'll be, moom 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 moom. I guess vocal fries below that. Moom 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 moom. Whatever. It doesn't really have a clear pitch. It's arbitrary in nature, so we have that. Moom 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 moom. Whatever. And then moom 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 moom. And then we have, let's see, a mix. Moom 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 moom. Yep. So a chest voice would be moom 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 moom. I lightened the chest. That would be moom 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 moom, like a mix. And then we have falsetto. Moom 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 moom. If I can do flashlight. Oh boy. Whatever. And then of course, I don't even. Oh boy. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. There's no whistle in it.
Let me see if I can do it.
No, my whistle is not
No, I
here
can't
today.
do it right now.
That's unfortunate,
But you can hear the way Wira was approaching the whistle.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it.
Did you hear that?
Do it again. Do it again. I was talking at the same time. Sorry. Do it
If I
again.
can do it again. Oh. I can't. That was just one lucky stroke.
Whistle is very, very elusive to a lot of people. I think one of the most consistent
Yeah.
ways to find it is to do an E glottal and then take the E glottal up. So we have.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah! Yeah! Exactly. Then we can have something
That
like
was lucky. That was a stroke of luck. Oh,
Yeah.
so hard to control.
Yeah, I can't even get that high in whistle. I don't do
You know,
whistle.
some people might not be able to hear the pitches that are going on. But,
Oh, I can't go.
like,
Oh, that's a stroke of luck today. but
Nice! So that was cool.
Took a while to find though.
I need to learn how to control that. I can't control my whistle like at all. Like I can get a few pitches, but I just don't use it. Like it's not to me. It's not necessary. I don't feel the need to use it because I have.
It is a party trick.
Yeah, I have a glorious flageolet that can go up to a B6. Why would I want to use whistle when I can just use flageolet? That sounds very similar. At the end of the day, it sounds.
maybe we should
incredibly
explain how the whistle works in comparison. So why
let's go
why
to
it's
whistle.
different. Yeah. Yeah.
But, well, my flageolet is. I didn't work on that. Oh no. Nope.
You gotta be looser. You gotta have more breathy qualities in your flageolet. But whistle is whistle is a complete, almost complete closure of the chords, except for a very small space in the back. Like Wise was saying earlier, there's a very small opening in the back where air quite literally whistles through that little gap in the back. That's why it's called whistle. It also just sounds like, but like really high up. So that's why it happens in the posturing of the chords, is that they're almost completely closed with that little gap in the back. That's what's really happening with whistle voice.
Yeah, and for flageolet, your vocal folds are
Oh dear.
still vibrating, and they're not. I mean, what I've seen in the paper that I read from the record, it seems like flageolet actually involves quite a bit of constriction at the top of your vocal tract. So it actually involves the top, like above your vocal folds, it gets quite narrow. So if you actually see videos of it, it's like your arytenoids, everything, like, you know, your vocal folds are like this. It's normally quite clear, but then during the flageolet thing, it's so stretched out, everything is really packed together somehow. But in any case, the point is your vocal folds are still vibrating. You're stretching your vocal folds, which helps all your other registers, because all your other registers need to be able to stretch. You know, you need to do it regardless. Oh, hello, we have a guest right now. What was I going to say? Yeah, yeah. And then with the whistle, you don't really seem to get any kind of vibration going at all, but you don't have any constriction at the top. Somehow it just works. Or the vibration is rather like at if there's any, it's just near the what's it? Is it the back? Or I think it's at the back. Yeah, it's just a small portion, if anything. So I don't think there's like full agreement how it works because it's kind of hard to film it and everything as well. Wait, give me a sec. I got the paper here. Let me just quickly fact check myself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Crazy
it's
how, you know,
yeah,
the voice can pretty much sing the whole piano almost. I mean,
yeah,
it's crazy. That was yeah, lowest note I sung was an E flat 2, as if you're wondering, and that whistle, E flat 7. Crazy.
yeah.
That was a stroke of luck today. I don't know if I'll be able to do that again, so I'm glad we caught that.
Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to say, when
Yep.
Wira did the whistle, you could hear what he was doing to approach it, which is besides the fact he was breathing, and you could hear you could hear this, which is basically it's
Yeah.
mode 0. Yeah. And I was even watching this video by Studio West, one of the YouTube vocal coaches. I think he's one of the CVT trained people, complete vocal technique, where he's teaching you how to do subharmonics, which use vocal fry, where you're doing where you're like putting your vocal fry in a certain way. Vocal fry involves your vocal folds being really close together, really tight together. And when he's doing the demonstration of how you can constrict your vocal folds in order to produce subharmonics, let's say from a slightly breathy tone, you want to constrict your vocal folds a bit. What happens when he does that during his demonstration? He slips into whistle a few times, and you can actually hear this like dolphin squeak while he's doing it. And you might even hear that a lot in when you hear singers when they're singing really belty, really tight. You'll hear like occasionally there's two notes at the same time. There's one where it's the belt, it's their real sound, and then two, sometimes it happens at the same time, sometimes it happens at a different time, but there will be this ultra high squeak at the same time. I have a video on my Instagram where I did that kind of accidentally as well, where I got like a flageolet and a whistle register going on at the same time. Like there are different notes with different sets of overtones. So it's different. Yeah. And oh yeah, I found this part in the article here, which is whistle register preliminary investigation by HSDI visualization something something. Yeah, so it says here that I think the high speed video, it showed I'm quoting here, showed a total absence of vibration, which is normal periodic vibration, so that means the vocal folds vibrating, in any components of the vibrating system caused by the stop closure phenomenon, which just means the whistle register. And he says that the true vocal folds are strongly adducted along their edges, so they're just like tightly held together, but there's nothing vibrating, which is like super weird. I mean, maybe it's vibrating, but we can't tell, So it's a different way of producing the voice. I think that I also find it a bit puzzling now that I think about it even more, that you would call this the same thing, M3, as flageolet or female laryngeal whistle or whatever else you may call it, where the vocal folds are vibrating, which is probably why Justin calls whistle register in when he talks in podcasts and stuff. He says it's called M4. He calls it M4, which which to me kind of makes sense. So, but more research to be done. Maybe it doesn't matter, but it kind of matters in a sense that when you see people in a voice lesson, and you saw when Wira did his flageolet, and when Mel did Mel's flageolet was a bit different, but when Wira did the whistle register, and Mel, can you do your whistle register? Just demonstrate it.
Okay. All right, hold on.
Yeah. And can you demonstrate flageolet now? Yeah. Yes. Notice how beautiful. I didn't plan this, but notice how Mel, if you like wind back, how Mel's mouth was shaped during the whole thing. With the whistle register, she was opening her mouth really wide for it to be audible in a sense. There's some acoustic tricks going on because, at least in this paper I'm reading, it seems that whistle register in that way is really soft if you don't open your mouth, if you don't do acoustic stuff. Yeah. So I see Wira's gonna try, but Wira. Yeah, it's tiny. Yeah. That was
It's
that.
so
Was
tiny,
that whistle? Yeah, that's really tiny. It doesn't.
The
sound
cool thing
so
is, though,
tiny.
I'm learning how to blend my head voice and flageolet together. So I can have an open flageolet. It doesn't have to be closed. So I can do like a.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
I
it
actually have figured that out
Can be.
by imitating like a soprano.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever that is.
Yes, you can make it open, but the thing is, like, for the whistle register, it kind of has to be open. For the flageolet, it tends to come easier when your mouth is more closed, but it's not necessary. You can keep your mouth open, and that's kind of how I will identify, or like I'll get a hunch that the person, when he shows me or she shows me, they're doing a flageolet, which I'm trying to use to train their range. If I see that their mouth is like the whole way, then I'll be suspicious. I'll be like, is that really flageolet? That the helpful one that I want to cultivate, or is that the whistle register, which actually cultivates a kind of tight vocal fold coordination, which you may not want to use in normal singing, So it's a very good diagnostic tool for me because people confuse it a lot, and they sound very similar, but they're produced completely differently and have completely different results in whether they're helpful in voice training at all. Yeah. So that's my rant.
Well, yeah, I think it's a really cool distinction. I think it's fun to try to research these things in your own time. I would love to at some point go to any ENT, just get scoped in general, and do different registers and see what that looks like. That'd be kind of cool. But I wanted to ask you guys, what?
I'm so confused. If
No,
it's
you're
not
fine.
a singer specialist,
Oh, you're
normal
good.
ENT. All right, let's see how your folds are doing. Oh, start vocalizing.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking for more of a vocalist or singing based ENT, someone who's familiar with singers. But I wanted to ask you guys, what kind of registers do you think you struggle with the most, and that your students struggle with the most when it comes to practicing or just doing lessons in general?
Go Wira.
That depends, really. Like student-wise, I have students struggling with different registers all the time. Like some students are great at head-dominant mixes. Some students that's the bane of their existence. So yeah, it depends on the student. Personally, it would be like a 50-50 mix for me. Just finding that exact middle ground is really tough. Because I've got like chesty sound. It's either all or nothing. So to find that middle ground is really tough for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's common for most people, but yeah, for me as well, it's kind of that middle ground because for me, my chest voice and mixed voice go really high, so I tend not to really need the falsetto for most of my, like the M2 stuff, for most of my singing, which is why I've been trying to practice, going in between them, and flipping between them seamlessly as possible. I don't know if you heard that, you probably did, but like, I start from here and then go, yeah, that was obvious. So I start from here and then go down into a mixed voice and then try to do the opposite and then go back up to the falsetto. And then I'm trying to like work that, and and I think that most people have issues kind of blending those things, and it's kind of what Wira said as well, finding that happy balance, because I think a lot of beginner male singers especially, they'll have trouble accessing their falsetto or lightening up their chest voice into or their M1 into a more mixy configuration. So they'll start like this, and then they'll go and then it just flips over, or like it gets stuck there. And it's funny, like, these are things that we learned in voice teacher training and all that, but reading the voice science papers, it's the same thing. They say that if you start from a chest voice below, you tend to get stuck. You can't really, it's very hard to flip to falsetto easily. And for falsetto, it's easier to go the other way around, like starting from your falsetto and then going down. Yeah, I've been thinking of a lot of tips to help myself, but yeah, just the question alone, I'd say the middle part. But for ladies, I think it's a bit different, because I think
was
ladies
about
tend
to just talk about that. Yeah. The males tend to be like chesty all the time and find it difficult to lighten up to a lighter mix. For the females, I find that they are not chesty enough. Like, they go to like that head dominant mix. They love that light head dominant mix. It could be because more females grew up with singing lighter, and more males grew up singing chestier all the time. So it could be that. Again, this is like tendencies, of course. I've had male students who talk very light and they can mix very well. So
Yeah, and I was reading also, it seems like for people who identify as female, like what happens is that or females from birth, they start like they have to navigate the mixed region, because what happens is their vocal folds are smaller, so their voices are naturally higher, but their resonances in their vocal tract aren't necessarily like that much higher. They're higher, but not that much. They're smaller necks, smaller throats, everything. But what that means is, I'm gonna probably go into this in more detail in the future, but when you go too high, right, and certain your pitch will interact with your vocal tract, basically. The pitches here, basically, you can think of everything above your vocal cords like a tube. And so when imagine your resonant frequency, which is something like I just hit my throat there, there's a pitch that comes out. Imagine that pitch is over here. I'm just holding my hand out in a straight line, flat, parallel to the ground. And imagine you've got your pitch and you've got like all your different harmonics above it. So that just means that when you say anything, you actually have one pitch at one frequency, and you've got a lot of other stuff above it. When these frequencies cross that resonance, stuff happens, and if you're not managing it, it'll cause jumps, and then you'll start to crack, which tends to happen every time you cross one of these things. And for ladies, because of the way their vocal tract tends to be shaped, and the pitches at which they have to speak, because it's smaller vocal cords, you're gonna get a lot of these jumps a lot more frequently than a man will have, because a man will talk like at this pitch and nothing will ever happen, or it'll be so minute that a man doesn't have to deal with it when speaking normally. And I think that I was reading, they were talking about how a lot of the studies on how the voice works in the beginning, a lot of them are kind of biased towards how the male voice works, which is like very low, and there's very little of these interactions where your voice can flip into falsetto. And for women, that's completely different. So, like, there's completely different tuning strategies. I'm gonna stop there. But yeah, there's completely different things that have to happen. So I think that it's kind of being used to it as well. Like, for females, they'll have to be used to that. And now I am talking too much as a man, so I'd like to hear Mel's perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, you're totally fine, Wise. I love that you're so passionate about this. It's so cool. I have students who struggle a lot with flageolet and the decompression aspects of flageolet. I have one particular student I've had for almost a year now, and she has a beautiful head voice. She can take her head voice up to like solidly now at this point up to like a D or even an E flat. But she just can't, for some reason, find that balance of squeak that she needs for flageolet. And we've tried so many different things, and it's just very, very tricky because it's like a very, very coordinated kind of fold posturing. And then I also have another student who has a really hard time with power in their chest voice, and that we've given her a bunch of like spoken word exercises and plosives and fry and all this stuff to get the power there, and she just doesn't have it. And her voice is really quiet and loose in general. So I told her at one point, I'm like, can you just say hey like really loud? And she tried and she couldn't do it. I'm like, I think you might actually need to go see an ENT because I don't think this is even a muscle coordination thing at this point. I think it's like something's going on. You need to get checked out. But yeah, those are a few registers that my students really struggle with. And then for me personally, my most difficult register is honestly probably a head mix going back down into a chest mix and transitioning from head mix into chest mix. Because I want to do like all these crazy riffs and runs, and then the second I try to like come down the scale and downshift into it. Sorry, my kid just like screamed.
So glad to lay you right there.
The second I want to come down into a more thicker sound, I crack like every single time, and I can't find the transition back down. I'm like, oh my god, like this is so frustrating. So Justin's like, you gotta downshift, you gotta add more beef. I'm like, I'm trying, but
Oh, I've been reading this cool thing that I think will be cool to play around with, which is that, you know, I was talking about your vocal folds about here, and then on top of that you've got first your twang, your twanger, which is your epilarynx, aryepiglottic sphincter, whatever. There's a thing here that can close and open, and you've got your mouth here, right? And what apparently is the case from this study I was reading from Ingo Tietze, one of the big vocology or vocal science guys, is that what happens is the narrower this is, and the less breath pressure you have, and the more acoustic pressure you've got here, you'll tend to have more pitch breaks. Like, ooh, if you're, what's it called? So, like, let's say you have a semi-occluded vocal tract, right? Like, ooh, ooh, ooh. That is a recipe for pitch breaks. If you've got a big twanger, like you've got this massive operatic ring going on, that's also gonna cause you to more easily crack when you go up because of this acoustic coupling phenomenon thing that I'm not gonna go into detail on. But the point is, if you want a smoother transition, because what's happening, remember I was talking about these like resonance jumps and all that, where your harmonics cross your formants, all that stuff. So even if like for yours it's a head mix going down to a chest mix, it's all within M1. There's no M2 to M1 crack, but it's still a crack because there is this resonance event that goes on. But this resonance event tends to only really happen if there is this coupling going on, meaning that you have this narrowed epilarynx, which translates to more twang, or if you have more of a narrow vocal tract, like an oo shape or an e shape, ooh. So that's why they're like heady vowels in a sense. And if you have less air pressure from your breath. So maybe one of the ways it can help you is also to, during that point where you're trying to transition, you may want to look into the opposite. Having more breath pressure. Anecdotally, I remember one of my choir members who's also just learning to sing in this mix, kind of by accident, but he was saying that for him, if he doesn't like clench his abs, please don't do this, guys, but from his perspective, you know, clenching the abs or keeping the abs braced and keeping that air flowing through, that's essential for him to keep him cracking on his way up. And the other way is to reduce the twang, you know? So, like, get rid of this and slowly become more like this. So, and the other way, and wider vocal tracts. So if you're, more ah, more ah, and less more ah but less twang, which is a bit crazy. But yeah, so that's something that I'm trying to play around with now. I think it's a work in progress whether it works, but at least theoretically, it seems pretty helpful because like anecdotally, from myself when I was training this like how I visualize it in my head is that I'm jam braking at the transition point. I am like slowing down. I'm lightening up at those points. But what that lightening up might actually be is that I'm reducing that twang at specific point. I'm like making subtle adjustments in a sense. Because singing is very subtle. Like it's very tiny adjustments, especially at these fine balancing points. This 50-50 mix, the moving from head mix to chest mix. When we say head mix to chest mix, I don't know if we explained it, but heady mix is just like, it sounds more like falsetto. But it's still within your M1 coordination. So, I don't know. You can give it a try, or people hearing this can give it a try.
Let's see here. I'm trying to think of a good point in a song that I can demonstrate where this happens. Uh, all in my head, every little glance my way, yeah, yeah. Well, that was more 50-50 anyway. I wasn't even really trying to go for a chest mix in the bottom there. But I think, oh, my piano just turned off. Oops. Why did that happen? I don't know. Hold on, let me see. On my head. Okay. Every little glance my way, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you hear that little break happen there. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this one I can talk about. So it was on the right? That was where the crash happened.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now I can actually bring this up. I had no idea whether I could. But all right. So this is a resonance thing as well. So so basically remember I was telling you about this throat pitch thing.
Yeah.
So what happens is that if your pitch or your harmonics, basically, let's say you're singing this pitch, ba, there'll be some other pitches like on top of it, like ba, ba,
Right.
and no, it's like ba, 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 like there'll be these pitches on top.
Yeah.
So if you're singing, let's say all we need to think about is this, like every harmonic as it gets closer to that first formant, that pitch. As it gets closer, what'll happen is that your vocal folds will actually become more efficient because of some science magic stuff. But like, so you will actually get louder, not just because of the filtering, but there's a feedback loop that happens, and it makes your vocal folds like super powerful without you doing anything. But once you hit the frequency, or you hit it just nice or just above it, what happens is all this power disappears because the state of the air in your vocal tract just changes. And so when that happens, it's like, oh, the power's gone. Oh my goodness, what happened? So what might help you, because you're doing yeah, you might want to do less of yeah and more of yeah, like yeah. You might want to try that, something like that.
Every little glance my way, yeah. Okay. All right, Wise.
Resident professor. All right.
All right, well, we gotta wrap up here, guys. We got a couple things to do because we got our thing coming up in a couple minutes here. But this has been really, really interesting. I'm really glad that you have so much information to share with us, Wise. I'm so glad that you're so excited about this. And then I love that you're working on your flageolet and continue to get that loose, breathy quality going through it. You're gonna be in a great place, dude. You're super close.
Oh yeah, super close.
Yeah, absolutely. But thank you guys for hanging out with me today and talk about registers. I think next time we'll move forward and maybe start talking about compression or resonance, one of the two. Whatever you guys want to talk more about. But thank you guys, I appreciate you, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you, Mel. Thanks, Wira.
All right. See ya.